A big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Hello and Happy New Year! I hope you're all having a really good start to it. I'm very excited for another year here on YouTube sharing with you all, and I hope you feel the same way. I thought we'd start this year the same way that we did last year with a compilation video of some of my favorite recipes that I did here on the channel last year. So there will be 7 recipes in this video, and if you stay until the end there might be a little bonus there as well. And I think we should just jump right in, and the first recipe I want to share is a speedy chickpea curry. It's from one of my 20-minute meals videos that I did last year. And before we kick into it, I just want to let you know that I'll link all the recipes down below if you want to see them written out. And I'll try to put some cards up here as well for the videos that the recipes come from in case you missed them. And this is a dish that we make all the time. It's full of flavor, warming, and of course delicious. I'm serving this chickpea curry with some rice, so I start by adding some white rice into a pot and pouring over some water. Then I swirl it around to rinse the rice, and I drain that water before I pop the pot on the hob, add fresh water and cook it. I do 1 part rice to 2 parts water. I cover it with a lid, bring the whole thing to a boil, and then turn down to a simmer until all the water is gone. And in the meantime, I'm prepping the veg for the curry, and I'm starting off by just chopping up 1 onion. When that onion is chopped and ready to go, I add some oil to a large pot that I'm going to temper some cumin seeds in. So when the oil is hot, I add in the cumin seeds and I let them sort of saute in there until they're really fragrant and a slightly darker shade of brown. That's when I add in the onions and I saute them until they're translucent. Next up, I grab some garlic and I press that into the pot. I allow this to saute for about 1 minute just to allow the flavors to come together and the garlic to become fragrant before I add in some tomato puree. I'm also going to add in some curry powder and some garam masala to give this dish lots of flavor. So I pop that in, and I'm also adding a pinch of chili flakes before I just mix it all up and allow that to saute for just 1 minute to combine and cook off the raw tomato flavor before I pour in a can of chopped tomatoes. I'm also going to add 1 can of coconut milk. I use a little bit of water to get the last bits of tomato out of my can that I just pour into the pot as well before adding 1 vegetable stock cube just to give it a good savory flavor base. I also season with salt and I allowed this sauce to simmer for a few minutes before I add in 1 can of chickpeas and 1 can of white beans, but of course you could use just chickpeas if that's what you prefer. I give the beans a good mix through the sauce before I add in lots of fresh spinach, and I'm using baby spinach, but you could use bigger spinach as well, cut into smaller pieces. And I just mix that through until it wilts on very low heat. I'm going to serve this dish with some crushed salted peanuts. So I pop those into my pestle and mortar and I bash them up, but of course you could serve them whole as well. It's whatever you prefer. I'm ready to serve now, so I pop my cooked rice onto the plate and then I serve the quick curry over the rice. Finally, I sprinkle over my crushed peanuts, and I'm also going to tear up some fresh coriander over the plate, but this is optional, you don't have to do it. I know many people don't like it, so just leave it out if you don't like it. You could also use parsley or some other herb that you like. Thai basil could be really cool on this, for example. Next up, I want to share a tempeh taco recipe with you guys with an avocado crema that's found its way onto pretty much every single taco I made last year. So it's something I really enjoyed. And again, it's a really quick and easy recipe, and I hope you will enjoy it. To start off, we're gonna prep some crunchy veg to go on our tacos. So I am slicing up some red cabbage to start. Next, I'm going to grate 1 carrot to add a little bit of orange to the mix and some nice sweetness. The third and final veggie going into this mix are some fresh radishes, which are one of my favorite spring vegetables, and I'm just going to slice those up into thin slices. I pop all my veggies into a mixing bowl and I'm going to squeeze some lime juice over all of it, which just gives lots of freshness. I'm also adding a few drops of this green hot sauce made from jalapenos and seasoning with some salt before I toss it all to mix. Then I set it aside for the flavors to come together while I prep the rest of the dish. And I start by slicing up 1 red onion that I'm going to saute. Once the onion has softened and gotten some color on it, I'm going to crumble in some tempeh. Tempeh is a fermented bean product. The particular kind I'm using is made from lupin, but the most common variety is made from soybeans. But you can find it made from all sorts of beans. And I just crumble it into my pan. I let it get a bit toasty and then I season it with some taco seasoning. I just buy this pre-prepped from the store. I'm also drizzling in some soy sauce to give a more savory, salty flavor, and the tempeh is really great at soaking up any flavor that you add to it. So I'm just gonna let that cook off while I make an avocado creamy sauce. I add some fresh avocado into my stick blender bowl and I pour in some unsweetened plant yogurt. I'm using an oat-based one, but you could use any type you like. I add some garlic powder and some salt, and then I'm squeezing in some more lime juice. This makes it really tangy and it goes really great with the savory tempeh. Finally, I use my stick blender to create a really creamy, smooth sauce that is yummy on these tacos. The tempeh cooked nicely during the time I prepped the sauce, and we're almost ready to serve. I'm just heating up some corn tortillas in a dry pan. You could use wheat tortillas as well, of course, if you prefer, but when mine are toasty, I like to pop the salad into them and then add my tempeh over that. I dollop a bit of my avocado cream sauce onto the tacos, and then I'm going to finish them off with a little bit of fresh coriander. Again, you can leave this out if you're not a coriander fan, but for all of us who like it, it really just brings a nice freshness to the dish. I also like to serve them with some lime wedges for squeezing over the top. Now, before we move on to the next recipe, I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video and tell you a little bit more about them. Squarespace is an all-in-one website builder which allows users to create a really beautiful and inviting space to grow their business or their projects. I've personally used Squarespace to build my food photography portfolio, and what I really like about it is that it's really easy and intuitive to use. You don't need any special skills at all to build a good-looking and well-functioning site. They even offer themes, font combinations, and color combos that really aid in the building process. Squarespace's builder has many uses as well, so it's great for business owners and e-commerce, as well as for creatives and bloggers. So if you're thinking about creating a website for any purpose, check out squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch your site, go to squarespace.com/goodeatings for 10% off your first website or domain. Now let's get back to the food. Next up is a recipe that I almost completely forgot to include in this video, and it's my black bean burgers. And I really don't know why I almost forgot, because these are a great staple and they're so yummy. They have a great texture and flavor, full of savory richness. And in the original video, I dressed these burger patties up in 3 different ways. But for this video, I'm just going to include my American style dressing and toppings. So if you want to see the other ways, I will make sure to link the video, the original video for these burgers. But here is my American style black bean burger. First, we're gonna chop up a red onion into chunks and pop that in a food processor. I rip some chestnut mushrooms into smaller pieces using my hands, and I pop that in the food processor as well. Then I pulse the mushrooms and onion about 3-4 times until it forms a really rough mince-like texture. Just be careful not to overmix here because you don't want everything to turn into mush. I add my black beans as well as some ripped up pieces of stale brown bread, which gives these burgers a really good texture. I add in some nutritional yeast as well as some garlic powder and smoked paprika. I also add in some flaxseed to help bind everything, and I season with some soy sauce as well as some tomato paste. I add a pinch of salt and black pepper to taste, and then I pulse the mixture again for about 4 or 5 times until it comes together to make a mince-like texture again. You want to make sure that there are still defined pieces in there so that there's chew to the burger, and it should be wet enough that you can form it into patties, but if you find that it's too wet, you can always add another 1/4 cup of the stale brown bread. I drizzle some olive oil over a lined oven tray, and this will help to crisp up the burgers when I pop them on there. And then I form my mixture into 4 large patties or 6 smaller patties, and I pop them onto the baking tray. Depending on the size that you make your patties, it will need a different amount of time cooking. So keep this in mind when you decide what size to make. Finally, before I pop my burger patties in the oven, I drizzle them with some olive oil again and spread that out over the top of them. This will again help the surface to crisp when you cook them. And I cook these burgers in the oven at 200 degrees fan assisted for about 25 to 35 minutes. And I flip them after about 15 to 20 minutes depending on their size so that they cook evenly on both sides. So now that the patties are cooking away in the oven, I want to talk you through the combos that I presented to you earlier. And the first one's going to be this American style burger. And the dressing for this is actually Rob Stad's recipe that he veganized from, I think, the In-N-Out burger recipe, an American burger chain. And to make it, I'm just mixing equal parts vegan mayonnaise with ketchup. To that, I add a little bit of Dijon mustard, some apple cider vinegar, a chopped up dill pickle, and then I season it with some salt and black pepper before I mix it all to combine. For the veggies, I am dressing this burger with some lettuce, some sliced tomato, and some sliced raw onions. I also like to dress this burger with some vegan cheese, and I thought I'd show you my favorite vegan cheese for this. It's the Epic Mature from Life, and what I do is that I simply slice some slices of this and pop it onto the burgers while they're in the oven so that it can just melt over the patty before I assemble the burger. And I actually like to do cheese on pretty much all of these burgers, but it's completely up to you. They taste good with or without. But I definitely think it really suits this type of American style burger really well. And this type of burger really is a classic for a reason, I think. It's just so simple but really delicious, and you just can't go wrong with it. I'd say this next recipe is probably the most satisfying dish I came up with last year. It's a creamy wild rice and mushroom soup, and personally I love mushrooms. I could eat mushrooms for breakfast, lunch and dinner pretty much every day for the next year and I'd be quite happy. It just adds lots of umami flavor to dishes, and I think that the soup is perfect for this time of year, so let's have a look. First things first, I need to prep some veggies for the soup, so I'm chopping up 1 brown onion, and I'm also going to chop up 1 large carrot as well as 2 celery ribs, and I'm going to chop them into similar sized pieces. Once the veggies are all chopped, I'm heating a large pot over low heat and adding 1 tablespoon of avocado oil. Then I saute the veggies in the oil for about 4 or 5 minutes with a pinch of salt until they soften and release a lot of their liquid. In the meantime, I'm going to prepare the mushrooms, and for this recipe I'm using 200 grams of chestnut mushrooms as well as 100 grams of oyster mushrooms, but you could use any type of mushrooms you like. For the chestnut mushrooms, I just slice them up. Then with the oyster mushrooms, I like to cut the woody base off and then just use my hands to take the mushrooms apart. If you find you have a lot of bigger mushrooms, then just rip them into smaller pieces using your hands. Before we return to the pan, I'm going to peel 3 large garlic cloves that I'm then just going to press into the pan. I saute the minced garlic with the other veggies for about a minute or until it's really fragrant, and then I add in the mushrooms, and I'm going to let them cook with the other veggies for about 5 minutes or until they released a lot of their liquid, and I like to add a pinch of salt to draw that moisture out. Next I'm adding in some dried herbs, and I've got 1 teaspoon each of dried rosemary, dried thyme and dried sage. I'm also using half a teaspoon of a black pepper blend, and then I stir that through before I add 1 cup of wild rice. I'm actually using this wild rice blend, but you could use wild rice, red rice or brown rice. It's really up to you. With the rice stirred through the veggies, I pour in 4 cups of water and add in 1 or 2 vegan chicken stock cubes, but you could use vegetable stock cubes as well if you can't find this particular kind. I give it all a stir and I bring it to a boil and then allow it to simmer under a lid for about 40 to 45 minutes or until the rice is nicely cooked. To finish off the soup, I'm adding in half a cup of vegan cooking cream. I'm using a soy-based one here. I'm also adding in 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, which adds lots of yummy flavor, and I season to taste. I give it all a good stir before I serve, and this soup is really so creamy and delicious. I really hope you will try it. Now let's go from really winter warming soup to something completely different, because this next recipe is Chickpea Chaat. It's a South Asian or Indian dish that's like a salady or snacky meal that I think is perfect for lunch. Rob and I made this all summer long last year, pretty much 2 times a week, I think. We really enjoy it, and it's definitely worth a trip to the South Asian or Indian market to get the right spices and this crispy topping that goes on top that's called sev. Yeah, what can I say? We really love this dish and I hope you will too. As this is a quick meals video, I'm using canned, or in this case carton chickpeas that have been pre-cooked, and 2 cartons will serve 4, and I simply drain and rinse them and allow them to drip dry a little in a sieve while I chop up the veg. I cube a small cucumber as well as 3 medium-sized tomatoes. I like using different colored tomatoes as it adds visual interest to the dish, but it's really not necessary if you don't have them on hand. I also finely chop the bulbous part of 1 fresh red onion and slice the green tops finely. Finally, I chop up 2 handfuls of fresh coriander. Then I simply combine the chickpeas, chopped vegetables and coriander in a bowl. Now to flavor this dish, I'm going to use a pre-mixed spice blend called Chaat Masala, and you can find this again in most Indian and Pakistani shops. It's just a blend of different spices that makes this taste super yummy. But traditionally you would also put other spices in this like cumin and chilies and dried mango powder. But I think it tastes tasty enough even with just this, so you don't need a bunch of spices, I think, to make this dish. But it's up to you. Again, you'll find the recipe that inspired me to do this in the description box if you want to make a super traditional one. I'm also going to stir through some tamarind chutney that I bought from the store as well, but I've tried this with different chutneys and it tastes good with most of them, so just use whatever you have on hand. So I add about 2 or 3 teaspoons of the chaat masala powder, as well as 2 or 3 tablespoons of the tamarind chutney. If you like it spicy, you can also add chili powder to taste. To give the mix a bit of acidity, I also squeeze in the juice of half a lime. I season with salt and I mix it all to combine. Make sure you get the seasoning right and then plate it up. To finish, I drizzle over some unsweetened vegan yogurt before I sprinkle over the sieve. If you wanted to go a little extra fancy, you can also sprinkle over some pomegranate kernels, but I've left it out today. This dish really has everything that makes food tasty. It's savory, sweet, tangy, crunchy, spicy, and juicy. I could eat this for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So we're nearing the end, but I couldn't leave out this vegan egg salad sandwich. And for the egg salad, I'm using tofu instead of egg. And what gives the salad itself that eggy flavor is kala namak, or Indian black salt. It's another thing that you can find at South Asian or Indian supermarkets, but I can even find it in my big supermarket these days, so a well-stocked store might have it. Just keep your eyes open for it. But again, it's a very simple recipe that is also great for meal prep, so let's have a look. And for this, you're gonna need some tofu. Like I said, I think this kind of medium firm type works best. Medium firm means that it's not super hard and not super soft, so something in the middle. So what I do is that I just pat a 200-gram piece of tofu dry with a clean tea towel or some kitchen roll, and then I cut it up into little egg-like cubes. I transfer the cubes into a bowl, and then I sprinkle in half of a teaspoon of Indian black salt, or kala namak as it's also called, and this will give the salad a really eggy taste that is really quite incredible. I toss the tofu in the salt to make sure that it coats all the pieces, and then I let it sit like this while I finally chop up a 5-centimeter piece of a fairly slim leek. This is something my mom always used to do, and it really works well in the salad. I add the chopped up leek to the bowl, and I also spoon in 2 tablespoons of vegan mayo, as well as 2 tablespoons of vegan creme fraiche, which will give the salad that creamy texture, but also a little tang from the creme fraiche. I like to also add a pinch of ground turmeric to give everything a soft yellow hue, but it's not really necessary if you don't have it on hand. Finally, I crack some black pepper over it all, and I give it a good mix to combine. Then to make the sandwich, I grab a nice brown seeded roll that I've cut open. I like to spread a thin layer of vegan butter on the inside to make everything sort of stay in place, but you do you. Then I place a nice couple of lettuce leaves on the bottom half, followed by a generous dollop of the tofu egg salad. And I finished with some crisp microgreens, another thing we sometimes topped our sandwiches with at my house growing up. It adds a hint of spiciness, which I like with the mild tofu egg salad, and it looks really nice too. Now for the final official recipe of this video, I want to share a dessert with you, because of course we need to finish with dessert. And I'm actually cheating a little bit because this recipe is from the New Year's 3-course menu from 2020, but it was so at the last minute of that year, so I think we can sneak it in here. And it's for poached pears with a ginger and apple cider sauce, which I think sounds pretty fancy, but it's actually very easy to make. And it's great for a weekend treat now during the colder months, because it's a warming dessert, or for a dinner party with friends. Well, you know, you do you, eat it whenever you want. I really love this dessert. Like I said, it's warming and it's cozy, and it's got everything I want for winter. So here it is. For the dessert, I'm going to start by preparing the crunchy topping, and for this I'm using some sesame seeds. I'm also going to add in some broken up pieces of pecans and walnuts. I really like these nuts, that's why I chose them, especially pecans add such a nice buttery flavor. To this I'm adding some maple syrup that will sort of caramelize the nuts when we toast them. I'm also adding a pinch of salt and mixing it all up until the seeds and nuts are coated with the maple syrup. Then I'm tipping it out onto a lined baking sheet. I spread it out into a single layer and then I'm toasting it in the oven. This only takes about 10 minutes in the oven, so keep an eye on them and toss them halfway through the toasting process. Once they're done in the oven, I allow them to cool, and as you can see, they sort of make this crunchy, brittle-like topping, and I like to just break it apart a little bit and I set it aside for later. To make the poached pears, first of all, we need to deal with the pears. So I start by peeling them. Then I chop the pears in half lengthways, and I'm going to remove the sort of butt part of the pear, and I'm also going to remove the core of it. And for this you could use the knife or you could use a teaspoon like I'm doing here to get it out of there. Then we're ready to bring the liquid that we're going to cook the pears in to a boil. And for this I'm using a pear cider. I just bought this from my regular supermarket. I like a dry one, so not too sweet. And I just pour that into the pot. I'm going to add some fresh ginger to give it a little bit of punch. We're making this cider into a sauce later, so I like that flavoring in there. Once it's come to a boil, I'm adding in the pears with the cut side down first. Once they're all in there, I cover it with a lid and let it simmer. And in the meantime, I whip up some vegan cream. I just buy it in the store and whip it up. It's super simple, but it adds that nice creamy texture to the dish without too much hassle. When I'm done with that, usually the pears have simmered for a while, and then I pop them over on the other side so that they cook evenly. I cover it with the lid again and let it simmer for a little while longer, and then I take it out of there, set the pears to the side, remove the ginger, and I'm ready to prepare the sauce. So I'm mixing some cornstarch or arrowroot starch with some water, and this will help thicken the cider that's left. So I just pour that in while whisking so that I get no lumps in there. And after a few minutes, I have a nice sort of glaze-like pear cider sauce with a nice taste of ginger. To plate the dessert, I'm starting by adding 2 pear halves to each bowl or plate, and then I'm going to drizzle over the ginger pear cider sauce, and I just use all of it for the 2 plates I'm making. Then I dollop some of the cream onto the plate and I top it off with the caramelized maple seeds and nuts. And that concludes the recipe. It's so simple but so yummy. I really hope you will try it. It's got the perfect balance between fresh, creamy, spicy, and crunchy. Now for a little bonus recipe here at the end, a recipe that I thought that we all needed now during this time of year, so I didn't want to cut it out from this video, even though it's not really a meal as such, because it's a hot drink, and it's Masala Chai, which is a South Asian or Indian hot drink made with spiced black tea and traditionally milk, but I like to use oat milk, my preferred plant milk. And yeah, it's super warming and perfect for these colder months that we're going into now in the northern hemisphere at least. And if you're in the southern hemisphere, you should maybe try it too, just because it's so delicious. I really hope you will like it because I love it. For For this drink, I'm using a lot of whole spices, so I'm adding some whole black peppercorn into my pestle and mortar, along with some cloves and some green cardamom pods. I'm also adding in 1 star anise, and then I'm going to use my pestle to break these pieces up and just release all the aromas out of these spices. I transfer them into a small saucepan, and I'm also adding in half of a cinnamon stick. I'm slicing in some thin slices of fresh ginger for some heat. Then it's time to add in the tea, and I'm using a loose leaf black tea called Ceylon, but you could use any type of black tea that you like. For example, a Darjeeling or an English breakfast would also work. I'm pouring in some water, and I'm bringing my pot over to the hob. I'm bringing the tea to a boil. And once it's boiling, I'm going to remove it from the heat straight away so that it doesn't get bitter at all, and I'm going to leave it to steep for at least 10 minutes. Then I return it to the heat, and I'm going to add in some plant milk. I'm using oat milk, but you could use any type you like. I'm also sweetening it with some maple syrup, but again, you could use any type of liquid sweetener that you like. I move the tea around in the pot as it gently heats up. And once it's warm, it's ready to serve. I strain it into glasses or to mugs and enjoy. It's really such a beautiful flavor. I hope you will try this drink. If you wanted to, you could top up your glass or mug with some frothed milk, but I think it's perfect like this. So that concludes this recipe compilation to kick off the new year. I hope you've enjoyed it and that you feel inspired to get cooking and to eat more plants if you're not eating all plants already. If you have a favorite recipe from this video that you've tried already, or if you have another favorite recipe that you're going to be cooking this year, please let me know in the comment section. I'd love to know, and I'm sure we'd all love to know, so that we can inspire each other with new and more recipes for the new year. I'm definitely looking forward to this new year here on YouTube with all of you, and I will see you already next week with a new video. So stay tuned. I'll see you then. Take care.